Hey everyone. Please support what I do to help keep Greyhawk alive by subscribing to the channel. Also, please consider becoming a channel member to get early access to videos, exclusive live chats, quarterly adventure modules, and more. Thanks, and enjoy the show.
So a few of the big RPG news channels have been speculating about whether or not D&D is, no longer king of the hill. Is it going to be replaced by something else? And I thought I'd throw my 2 cents in today on Greyhawk Grognard. So, Professor DM over on Dungeon Craft has broached this subject, and so has Bob Worldbuilder, and a whole bunch of RPG channels have basically asked the question: is D&D going to be toppled off of the top of the hill as the most popular RPG? And it's worth discussing. I'm going to get to my answer in a bit, but I want to lay the groundwork first. It's worth knowing, it's worth remembering that D&D did in fact lose that title of top spot RPG right before fifth edition came along. Right when fourth edition released and it sucked, and most people realized it sucked eventually, and then they announced pretty early on in 4E's life cycle that they were going to a 5E. People stopped buying D&D because they didn't like the D&D version they had, and they knew a new version was coming out, so they just stopped buying stuff, and Pathfinder took over the top spot. Fine, okay. And then 5th edition came out, and D&D went right back to the top. And just a reminder, the Adventures Dark and Deep Core Rules Kickstarter is happening right now. This is my answer to what would 2nd edition have looked like if Gary Gygax had stayed at TSR. It's got all the new classes he was talking about. It's all got all kinds of changes. It's got a skill system, but it's all based on those 1st edition rules. So do check it out. Link is below. And, now back to the video, to the top. In terms of D&D Killers, there are a ton of candidates out there, right? I mean, you've got Black Flag, you've got Daggerheart, MCDM. No, what's it called? MCDM RPG. From Matt Colville, Shadow Dark. There's a gazillion OSR games coming out, including my own Adventures Dark and Deep. Not that I ever think that it's going to be the most popular RPG in the world. It is for me. That's why I'm publishing it, but I have no illusions. And I think that's actually true of most OSR RPGs. They're never going to get to the top for reasons I'll explain as we go. And there's a bunch of things, Swords and Wizardry coming out with new versions all the time, and there's Hyperborea and all that good stuff. So, and I really think when you look at this, there's a couple of things you have to consider. First of all, the top RPG anywhere but Japan, where Call of Cthulhu reigns supreme, is going to be a fantasy RPG. I don't think there's really room at the top for a sci-fi RPG, for example, or a horror one. Although Call of Cthulhu is a fantastic game, I've been playing it since college. I love it, but it's not top. It's not going to be at the top of the hill of the pile. It's going to be in the top 5, to be sure. But I'm talking about the peak, the pinnacle of sales. I don't think it's really got a broad enough appeal to do that. Same thing with Vampire the Masquerade. It's got an enormous. I used to play it back in the Air Force. It's got an enormous player base. It's got a huge history, but it's just too specific, right? It is a sub genre. And it's just, you're not going to get that many people across the globe who want to play Ventru or Toreadors or whatever, whatever you got. I love to play a mummy myself, but that's just me. So in my opinion, it's going to be a fantasy game, and I already rattled off a few big fantasy games that are coming down the pike. But I think what's really going to be the determining factor whether or not D&D keeps its number one spot as a tabletop role-playing game is just how far they go down the road of not making it a tabletop role playing game. We already know that they want to shift everybody over to an online experience. And the reason they want to do that is because then they can charge a monthly subscription fee, and then they can upcharge for microtransactions, so you can have a fancy hat or, custom dice, or, give your character blue eyes or whatever the hell they're doing. But because of the current player base, they have to still offer the tabletop experience, even though even that they're kind of pushing you to augment it to your laptop, so that you playing the game even at a tabletop with a bunch of people across it, face to face, you're still all going to be having your tablets, your laptops, your phones, and that's you're going to be playing, you're going to be on that while you're playing on the tabletop. So it's almost a hybrid approach. Um, it depends on how far they go down that road and how mandatory they make that. I really think that if they do that, they're going to lose their position as the number one tabletop role playing game, um, and then they're going to, they're because it's not going to be a tabletop role playing game anymore. It's going to be an online game, and which is what, fine if that's what they want to do, because they'll make a lot of money. I've always maintained that they have calculated, they being Wizards of the Coast slash Hasbro, have calculated that they could afford to give up their entire current player base and replace it with a new player base that's more comfortable with monthly subscriptions and microtransactions. And that player base obviously is in existing online gamers. And there's a zillion of those out there, and all they have to do is look at some of the most popular online RPGs, online fantasy RPGs, and see just how much money they rake in every month. And they're looking at that and they're saying, why can't we do that? And that's where they're going eventually. And uh, in the business theory of, you drop the lowest 20% of your product line, even if it's making money, you still drop it because it's not your focus, which is what they seem to be doing, when they make decisions like, we're not going to make Portuguese books anymore. Well, there goes Brazil, which has an enormous fantasy RPG community. But they did it seems like the reason they did that is because they're following that 80-20 rule, and they're dropping the 20 to focus on the 80. And then, you keep doing that, and eventually you emerge with this core business of things that make a ton of money for you for a relatively small investment. And I think that's what they're going to end up doing. They're going to 80-20 themselves out of the tabletop RPG space, because in their mind, and probably in reality, they're going to make a ton more money focusing on that online. And eventually, the tabletop portion of their product and their player base is going to be part of that 20% that they trim off to focus on the 80% of online stuff that's making them a zillion dollars. Um, so honestly, I think that's really the determining factor here, because if D&D stays, D&D 5.5 or D&D Forever or D&D Eternal or whatever the hell they're going to call it, if they focus on keeping it as a tabletop RPG, maybe with a little, ancillary stuff, that hybrid approach I mentioned, then they could probably stay there forever as the top tabletop RPG. Uh, as I say, I don't think that's what they want. I think eventually they're looking to transition away from that, and that will open up the space for somebody else. And whether or not that's Pathfinder or Black Flag or Daggerheart or whatever, Shadow Dark, whatever, is still up in the air. And I don't think there's any way to predict, because a couple of those big games that are coming down the pike, they're not done yet. They're still being play tested. In some cases, they're still being designed as they're being play tested. So it's not possible to predict who will come out on top. I did say earlier on that I don't think it will be an OSR game, and I think that's for a couple of different reasons. First of all, OSR games mainly appeal to older gamers like myself. That's just the reality of it. And the reason for that is that they are based on the games that we grew up with. So there's an enormous nostalgia factor. There is also the factor um, uh, of the fact that we're used to those systems. I could play first edition in my sleep without a book, and anything based on first edition, like Osric or Adventures Dark and Deep, or something, or Labyrinth Lord Advanced, anything like that, I could probably just do it without having the books handy. So it's a familiarity thing for me, and I think for a lot of people in the OSR. Also, the OSR appeals to a more what's the word I want to use? People who are more comfortable bashing stuff, who like to tinker, who like to add on things and experiment and so forth. And I think that it, again, is a generational thing. That the gamers today are less comfortable with that. They want everything kind of in a unit, and they can stay within the boundaries of that unit. Everything's well defined. You use pre-published adventures that fit within those pre-published rules, and there you go. That's not to say that modern gamers don't kit bash stuff or that they don't homebrew campaigns. Obviously they do, but I'm talking about majorities here. I'm talking about, when you're playing the percentages, most of them don't, which does not mean that all of them don't. And as so I think the OSR, although it does have a lot of great stuff. I mean, obviously I list OSR stuff, I play OSR stuff, I hang out with OSR people. I think that it is probably likely that an OSR game is not going to be the one that comes out on top eventually. And it might not even be any of the ones that are out there now. There might be some other game, some other black horse that's waiting in the wings, to a dark horse that's waiting in the wings to assume that top spot. Right now, just based on history, Pathfinder would probably be the the logical prediction. But I don't know if Pathfinder Second Edition is ultimately going to be more popular than Shadowdark or Black Flag or whatever. There's no way to tell because we haven't really seen those games yet. Fully done, fully formed, fully supported. So to boil it down, my prediction is that if, as I think is likely, Wizards of the Coast is going to focus on its online project to the exclusion of a tabletop project eventually. I don't say that's going to happen in 2025, but I think that's the direction they're going to push stuff. Then I think that will open up the space for some other game. Right now, I'd say Pathfinder, but I can't make that a commitment until I know what the other games are like. So I think right now we are literally in a holding pattern because we don't know what direction Wizards of the Coast is going to go in. They might start to move in that direction, realize it's not working, and then pull back. There's an infinite variety of scenarios that could happen. So there's no way to tell. And second, we don't know which of the non-D&D games out there will come out on top because they're not all, out there to evaluate in the market. So anyway, just some thoughts I had on this question. I'm always good for a good bandwagon. Hope you're having a wonderful day, and I will talk to you soon, and stay safe from Pinkertons.
Thanks for watching today's video. Please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Below you'll find links to my Patreon, which helps make these videos possible. You'll also find the web store where you can buy my books, and my blog where you'll find all sorts of free downloads and other articles. Thanks, and have a great day.